Welcome to Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. Now, here are your hosts, Jonathan Turner and Nathan Wangler.
Good morning, and welcome back here to another edition of Inside the Game here on this Thursday, July the 24th. And I was in here yesterday. I was out at the beach, is where I was here on Wednesday. And where was I? I was in Holland, Michigan. Well, Holland / Saugatuck. It's weird because it's considered Saugatuck State Park, whatever it's called, in the Saugatuck Dune State Park, but it's in Holland, Michigan. It's very confusing.
All right. Okay, so you weren't in Saugatuck proper then. All right, so I had the wrong idea. Here I am on the show telling everyone to.
It's called Saugatuck Dune State Park.
I don't know if I believe you.
Located in Holland, Michigan.
I think you're a big liar. I think you live in a house full of lies, Jonathan Turner.
Well,
no,
it's possible. I mean,
so you frequented this place then, right? Because it seemed like you already knew where you were going, what you were doing, what place you were going.
Yeah, we've gone there. I think every year, like the last 4 years, we've gone. I mean, the thing about this particular beach is that it is a mile walk from the parking lot through the woods. To the beach, and when you get to the end of it, it's beautiful. I mean, the reason I like it is because there's like nobody there. I've said this before. I'll keep saying,
yeah.
I don't like people, but
most times, yeah.
I like people, but I don't like people when I want to be out and about.
That's fair. I'll give you that. Yeah.
So,
I mean, anytime you have to take a maiden voyage to the beach, you got to go down to winding staircase, or you got to go through the woods to get to the end location. It's going to be pretty good. So it's beautiful out there. There's a lot of private beaches along that coastline. So that's the interesting thing. When you go to Saugatuck proper, you go down and you look around and you're like, okay, there's a collection of people around me. But then you look as far as the eye can see, and there's nobody. And the reason being is because of all those properties along that beach line, the beach. A lot of them are private properties. But then again, they're not there. A lot of the people aren't there the entire time. So I mean, you could just walk for days and not run into anybody. In my mind, that's the greatest part. But you go to a Grand Haven, obviously you're going to get the public beach where it's really busy. Same thing with Muskegon from time to time. Have you ever been to the Deck, by the way? The little place on the beach in Muskegon? And I know you keep listing off all these places in Detroit that I've never been. I had Wingstop for the first time, by the way, last time I was down there. Terrific.
I don't think that I've ever been. I mean, I've been to Muskegon, but I don't think I've ever been to what you're talking about.
Okay.
We went to Silver Lake Dunes last year, and that was a blast. We did that in August. Hopping on those dune buggies and doing that. That was a blast.
Did you ever crawl up the dunes just you yourself?
No.
You didn't scale the dunes? Come on, man. Let's have the fun.
So we did go to this part of where we did some photos and did some family photos and stuff. And so we did some of the dunes, but nothing. I mean, those dunes, no. It is.
It'll test your will, man.
The fact that nobody dies there on the regular makes no sense to me.
Well, I mean, if you ever been to Sleeping Bear Dunes, people go all the way down, and there's warning signs everywhere. Hey, you might not be able to climb back up again. This is the real deal. You're playing danger games here. If you go all the way down, you can't get back up again. And it's saying it teaches you a lot about yourself. It teaches you a lot about perseverance once you're about 80% up the dune and you're bear crawling now because you can't, your lungs are giving out. A lot of those high schools down in that direction for training and football, they'll go out and they'll run the dunes and they'll climb all the way up. And I understand why. So it'll push you. It'll teach you a few things. But no, it's gorgeous out there. But I love that area. I don't think I've ever been specifically to where you are. I think I go to a different place in Saugatuck when I go out there. But yeah, I mean, just as far as the eye can see, sometimes there's just nobody. You know, it's not like walking on like a public beach by the ocean where you just got people sprawled all over the place. It's pretty tranquil, if you will. So I love that area out there.
So we got a big, busy weekend here coming up that I wanted to touch base on here real quick. Tonight, we've got the League for Clubs semifinal matchups taking place on the network. Those kick off at 7 Eastern, and I believe 10 Eastern here on the network. And then tomorrow, USL 2 kicks back off again. We've got 4 games, quarterfinals taking place on the West Coast and the East Coast. We also, obviously, we'll talk more about that tomorrow morning as well. Saturday, we've got the League for Clubs third place game, and then the national final, and then the UPSL quarterfinal in Cleveland that kicks off again Saturday afternoon, and then ultimately on Sunday we've got the semifinals of the USL 2. So a busy weekend for us. Not as busy as it's been, obviously. Not as busy as it's been, but it's still busy nonetheless. I'm a little rattled this morning, Nathan. It's funny because we talk about growth, and I want to get into that because growth is something that it's good and bad. You know what I mean? It comes in a lot of different ways. We've grown pretty rapidly with our viewership, and with that, our staff has increased. And as we're trying to grow, there's a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. I don't pretend to know how to handle all of those. But growth is just it's tricky, right? Because I think that when you start a business, when you start something like what we do here, you want to see everything flourish. You want to. And you try to put everybody in a position to be successful. That doesn't always work out. And obviously everybody has difference of opinions about what that looks like. But I just, and when I say I rattled this morning, I'm rattled because I have high expectations for what we do. I don't think that they're unattainable or they're too high. I think that they're right where they need to be. But my biggest thing is that the growth that we're trying to accomplish is going to come in a lot of different waves. Waves of viewers, waves of teams and clubs and you name it. And trying to maneuver and try to stay within a certain lane is probably one of the biggest challenges that we face. Cash management, all of those things. And the reason I bring that up this morning is that, we're at the end of our summer, right? We're at the end of it. Next Saturday is it. Like, we have nothing after next Saturday. That's the end of the USL 2 season. And then we're done. We have nothing going on until the end of August, and when our next contracts start to kick back into place. So we're off, for a bit. And so there's a time for us to reflect, a time for us to look at how this summer went and how do we improve upon it? How do we get more viewership? How do we do this? How do we do that? And something that I've figured out along the way, when I first started this here 4 years ago, I wanted to be this multimedia conglomerate company, right? One that focused on both the game in which we cover, live streaming, broadcasting, and then news. I wanted both. And I had no idea what that meant. To be fair, I'm still trying to figure out what it means. We don't consume things the way we used to. We don't consume things the way we used to. We see that every day. I mean, me and you, we'll talk on this show for an hour. We will clip out 30-second clips from our show of which the first 10 seconds is totally and entirely intended to get you to get an emotional response. You will not watch the rest of it. Comment on the first 8 seconds, and then we'll have fun with it for the next 3 days. Like, that's entirely what we do.
Right.
You know, are people reading? Are people doing things? You know what I mean? Are I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. Someone's knocking at my door. I might have to step aside because I have no way of answering the door. So I might have to have you go solo for a second while I do.
It's okay. That's okay. You go do your thing.
Right.
You go run out there. The way we consume information has completely changed, to his point. And when we have these conversations about what the future looks like, the sad thing is, and I'll even say this from my perspective, is that we've completely gone the opposite direction. When it comes to consuming information, you can consume information from multiple different places. And ultimately, you're never really quite sure what exactly is reliable and what exactly you can rely on and what exactly you can't. And to provide that uniquely with a level of consistency is something that's very hard to do. And with that, you have to have the right people in the right places. And the truth is that the way you treat people matters. The way you build those connections matter. The way you're able to get people to believe and buy into what you're doing matters. It all plays a role. And when you're in a stage like we are right now with this company, there is this fine line because we are trying to build. We are trying to do something that in a lot of ways has never been done before, but is something that many people are trying to do at the same time. The difference comes when you talk about the way in which we go about it, because you have the live streaming, and that's something a lot of people do. You see that all over the place. You see different live streaming companies popping up with the technology and the ability to live stream and do games in a unique and different way in which it doesn't always require you to be there. The way in which we are doing business completely changes the ball game. And so on the live streaming aspect of it, not that anything we do is terribly unique, but in a lot of ways, it forces us to be in a different type of place because we are trying to do things in a more efficient manner that oftentimes doesn't require the price tag that it would require to do it the way that people used to do it. And you look at these companies that are covering these major sports. You know, you think of the likes of Bally, you think of the likes of some of these other networks that are probably not very long for the sports world. They're all dealing with the same issue, and that's the price tag. That's how much it costs between manpower, equipment, all of these other things to make it possible to do these games in person at a consistent level. And so the difficulty of this is that when you start to branch out from that, when you start to do different things and broadcast in different ways, all of a sudden you're presented with something brand new, which is how do we get you the information? How do we get you what you need in an efficient manner so that you can do your job without having to, again, go through all the different steps and the different things that you used to do? That's what we're trying to figure out here on the National Soccer Network. And it's tough for people to understand because it's something that they just haven't seen much before. And it's something that it is, in a lot of ways, terribly unique. And unique in the way of we're just trying to do it a different way. But oftentimes that lends itself to issues. You know, sometimes when you're not in the mix, when you're not in the environment, it's really hard. It's extremely hard to get a pulse on what's going on. And in a lot of ways, what this reflects, the way we're doing our business, is the simple fact of where we are oftentimes as an industry. And that's the amount that's out there in terms of, you know, we'll just say it out loud, money doesn't necessarily allow you the ability to do everything that you might have used to do in the convenient, conventional way of going about this business. You know, a lot of us have other jobs. A lot of us have other things that we're doing. I can speak personally from the play-by-play perspective. There's a lot that has to be done in order to maintain your position in this industry. And I have a conversation coming up. As a play-by-play talent, I have a coach, and so this is someone that I go to consistently. We got our meeting coming up a little bit later on today. What's going on, Peter? Welcome back in, my man. Appreciate you hopping on as always. Comment number one. Like I said, we gotta get you something for being the first comment every single time. I got this bag of coffee, this Good Morning coffee from Lansing Common off to my right because they were sick of watching me use the instant coffee. You guys remember the instant with the mason jar? Good day, good times. I think that was episode 1 through 20. But now I got this stuff. You can't really, I'm not going to tip it because I'm going to pour it all over my laptop, and then we're going to have a much bigger issue because then no one's going to be on the show. So cheers. We got to get you we got to get you a nice little care package for being the first one to comment, but appreciate you hopping in, man. Have fun with the UPSL playoffs. We'll be talking about that coming up here in a little bit, but to get back on track with what we're talking about here, it's tough to stay in, again, we're talking about the live streaming play-by-play perspective, and a big part of that conversation that I'm having on later on today is, how do I keep my energy up? How do I keep my spirits up? In a world where routinely in this field, you will find yourself in positions where you wonder did you hit your ceiling? Is this as good as it gets? Is this as high as it goes? Because for a lot of people, that's the scariest component of it. And we run into that sometimes with the live streaming here too. Is this as good as it gets? We're trying to have these clubs and these teams assimilate to the way that we do business. And sometimes when you do that, it doesn't necessarily come off the right way. Communication can tend to break down. Oftentimes it's the other way. The club wants you to be there. They want you to be in that environment. They want you to be in that building. They want you to be around the players and the teams and the coaches. But from our perspective, we're trying to teach them a new way of doing business, a new way, maybe a more efficient way of going about doing this job that will provide you that consistency that you want to see, while at the same exact time accounting for the lives and the efforts of the people who are working here. That I'm going to be straight up honest with you guys, and JT would even echo this. Nothing will ever beat being in person, but is it logical every single time? And so that's just the live streaming component of it. Right. But when we talk about the other component of it, not just the live streaming, right? When we talk about the multimedia and the news component of this, collecting that information and having those connections is something that when we talk about, especially our transition from going from a Michigan-based company to a nationally based company, is not an easy one to do. When you get yourself as deeply ingrained in one state as we were for the longest time, and there was a lot of, obviously we had our award show at the end of the year. A lot of things were set up for us. I remember doing social media stuff, and there's a lot of great reception from high schoolers across the state of Michigan. There was in a lot of ways a foundation, but when you take that leap, and again, it is a leap of faith in a lot of ways, when you go from Michigan-based to nationally based, the things that you need to do in order to switch up the way you go about business, just because of the sheer workload, is a different story. It's a completely different story. And so making that transition in both areas is a hard thing to do. And to our credit, and I don't mean to pat myself on the back here, there are elements that we have gotten down. I think this show has gotten better as time has gone along. And listen, if anyone out there wants to get into podcasting, first of all, pause. Okay. Number one, you got to figure out what direction you want to go and what your target audience is. If you don't, you're done. It's not going to happen. All right. So that's number one. Number two, in terms of audio and video and everything else like that, we have the technology now to where anybody anywhere can make a podcast. This is why people get frustrated, right? And I always look forward to getting this one gripe under every single video that we do, and that's podcast equipment should be more expensive. Well, unfortunately, everyone and their grandmother has a laptop. Everyone and their grandmother can probably afford a cool $300-400 once in order to get everything they need to make this happen. It doesn't take a whole lot, right? But if you're going to insert yourself into the mixing bowl, the slew of podcasts that are out there, you better have something unique that you're coming with. But the last thing that I'll say is that there's a level of consistency and dedication and patience more than anything else in order to grow a show. The sheer amount of patience, diligence, focus, preparation to make something like this worthwhile. Because again, you're not just thinking about it from your perspective. It's easy to just turn on the screen and just wax poetic about anything. And we go on rabbit trails. There is some sort of validity to the just shooting the breeze, because that's what normal conversations feel like. And you want to emulate as best as you can what a normal conversation is. That is the most important thing in my mind when you talk about the podcasting world. But I always give people pause because the level, again, of dedication and time commitment that goes into making something like this worthwhile is a lot. And where people are in their lives, sometimes it's not always the easiest thing to do. And so, again, speaking on components of this business that I think we've done well in, I think the podcast is doing well. I think we're moving forward. I think we're inviting more people. The world of podcasting has changed in a lot of ways. I believe JT's back on. What's on? What's up?
What up? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Take care of what you got to take care of.
No, it was funny. I actually got it was an advertiser that kind of was being walked in here, so it was kind of nice. I don't that doesn't happen quite often, so I was like, yes, come on in, let's talk. So no, I apologize to our viewers, but
all good.
What did I miss?
No, I was just kind of doubling down on exactly what you were saying, but feel free to continue with what your thought was.
Yeah, I just, the way we consume things is entirely different than the way maybe me and you did when we would have been crossing the same kind of age path, I guess. I was just thinking about this yesterday, right? I was sitting out at the beach yesterday, and there's really no service there at all. So when I'm like off the grid, I'm literally off the grid, and I'm looking at these videos, right? I'm watching TikTok, I'm watching Instagram as best I can in the quote unquote, one bar I have on my phone. So, but you're sitting there and you're trying to take in these 15-second clips. Think about it. I mean, everything I do is now consumed in 15 or 30-second clips. If my attention span isn't there, I lose interest very quickly now with Netflix and with everything. I mean, I could put a show on from Netflix, and after about 30 seconds, I don't want to watch that show. I might give it more time, but traditionally I don't give it a lot of, and so the way we consume everything is different. Our food, everything is different. And so it just makes you have to constantly be reevaluating what we do and how we do it. Whether that be in the games, and I'm constantly evaluating our streams, the graphics, the way we handle them. What can I add that's new that we haven't done before? Constantly doing that. But the one area that I could not do that with is our news side, because I don't know the news. I don't pretend to know it. But like our readership has been in decline, and we ask ourselves, well, why is that? Why is that? Is it because the way we're consuming media? I think it is. I think absolutely it is. We from that perspective, were we doing everything we could, or are we doing everything we could in that division to be able to get more views? And the answer I keep coming back to is no, we weren't, and we aren't. And so are we going to remove the news from our? No, I don't think we're going to be removing it, but we have to make significant changes to that environment. And so, that's something that we're looking at and evaluating right now. And it just pains me because we want everything we do to be successful, everything we do. And it's just not always the case. And to be fair, we need to be asking our viewers what they want, what you want to see more of, what we're not doing enough of, And that's like where the evaluation has to happen. We have to evaluate that. And so, yeah, I'm rattled this morning because I want everything we do to be successful. And right now, not everything we do is successful. That's why. I'm also rattled because when I bring people into this, when we bring people into this, we want them to be successful. I don't care where you are in our world, whether you're a producer, you're a writer, you're a commentator, it doesn't matter. If you're successful, we're successful. And so, and from my position, I try to give people the best I possibly can. And is that enough? It's not. I'll admit that. I don't think there's a CEO on earth or a president on earth that can sit here and say that they are able to give their people everything that they need all the time. It's just not a thing. It's not possible. You want to give people the best foot forward so that they can be successful. That's why we go through our processes with our producers. That's why we go through the process with our people. People are what make this thing great. Not me. I mean, yeah, you can give me some credit for what I've been able to accomplish, but it's people like you, Nathan. It's our producers. It's the people that make this thing work. And so, yeah. Yeah.
And you gotta make people feel like they belong too. I mean, that's the other side, and I think when you talk about working with different types of people, and I think it's something that's intrinsically hard about running a business, is you have to check in a lot. You have to be willing to foster, in a lot of ways, a personal relationship with people, which I don't think comes as easily to a lot of people. There has to be patience. There has to be understanding. There has to be flexibility. There has to be an openness and a willingness to hear other people's opinions and things that they think will move the company forward. Because I realize it's sometimes a hard thing to do, especially when you have a vision on how everything should be and how everything should be done and how everything should be run. And I think, as a company and as a business that in a lot of ways is still, like I said, brand new, not that this is your first time ever doing this, but in the capacity in which we're doing it, a lot of it's brand new. And so because of that, when people come in our doors, and they're willing to sacrifice whatever it is amount of time, whatever it is in terms of effort to try and move us forward, even if things aren't necessarily hitting the way that we would expect them to, I think the biggest component in my mind is patience, is willingness to work with people, is willingness to put things down in writing and put expectations down in writing. That's these are steps, basic steps in a lot of ways to ensure that not only we're all on the same page, but people know what's expected of them. Because when you don't have that, then communication gets crossed and people get left behind and people get lost in terms of not only what am I doing here, but what am I supposed to be accomplishing? And so I think when you're missing some of those components, naturally you're going to run into things that are going to sideline you as a company. And I think, like you said, it's not perfect. There are holes, there are things that need to be fixed, there are things that need to be addressed. And that's what makes it all really hard. Because you're trying to find out the fixes and the solutions to these issues in real time. And that's what makes it really hard, because you can't really put a pause on things. That this is the ultimate truth about the sports world. And I heard it stated yesterday, and this is something I was mentioning my broadcast coach a little bit earlier, and something I want to talk to about him. But the sports world is always moving. Fans don't take time off because they can be fans on their time. But when you're in this job, when you're the one that's producing that content, when you're the one that's sharing that content, it pays to have help. It pays to have people around you that can push you forward, that can assist you, that can be there. And there's a reason why every broadcast booth in America is the best when there's two people in there and not just one person. There's a reason why when people sometimes get caught in positions where they're falling behind, it's often times because they don't have the help or the support network that they need in order to get done what they need to get done on a consistent basis. The sports world never stops because fans never stop. There's always something more that you could be doing.
Yeah, no, and I don't disagree with you on that. And I think it's important too to state this, with a year ago right now, it was just two people and some contractors, but we mainly use the same people. It was you, it was Ryan, it was Sam, Stan, right? It was just it was it, and we quickly went from that to over 100 and different production companies all across the country that we work with. And so in that, part of me, for the sake of growth, did not write out a lot of processes. One, because we were learning them in real time. And we were finding out things that were like maybe red flags, in our environment, like doing personal things or doing this or the other, right? So finding and now creating those policies around the behaviors we saw happening in our environment. That's all stuff that kind of trial and error, very much like what we've been doing over the last 3 years. Everything we've done from the production standpoint, has been trial and error. Try this, didn't work. Try something else, didn't work. Try this, oh, it works, great. We're going to do that now moving forward. And we've done the same. We've had the same approach with our people. And so, yeah, I can understand and appreciate that expectations, and I don't. Everybody's had, who's in our organization, has had an expectation kind of conversation. Some of those things are written in bold and on a paper someplace, and some are ongoing where the expectations, it's a moving target. It changes, right? Our producers, that's a moving target because every week we do something, every game we do something, it might change. Our graphics going to change, or the way we produce, the way we set up a new game. All these things can change. And so the expectations for which we do something in an environment might change. Like last week, we did a pregame show. We did a halftime report. We did a postgame show, none of which we've ever done before on a consistent basis. And so therefore, a rundown wasn't available, right? And I tried to do a rundown, but to be fair, I didn't know how it was going to go. And so Corey, he was here in our studio alongside with Patty, and they came up with one, and that's what they followed. Now moving forward, we'll take that, and that's what we did. Moving forward, and I have other rundowns that we've done but we opted to just go this direction. Good, bad, or indifferent. And yeah, is it rougher? Yes, it is. But to be fair, in our world, if you can't roll off without having a rundown is just a crutch. And so you can have it in both ways. Being scripted, having a rundown for whatever is great. And sometimes you rely heavily on that. But when, the power goes out, you lose the teleprompter, what do? How do you respond? How do you react? Right? I mean, if you ever go to a restaurant on a busy Friday night and all of a sudden the credit card machines go down, have you ever seen that chaos before? They've never gone through a situation where they've dealt with it without and having to go through and grabbing all the numbers and making it all work. I mean, those things happen. How about when computers go down, right? I mean, those things are all real things that happen. And how do you prepare for that? I'd rather go the route where you're prepared fundamentally and foundationally for everything. And then we give you the tools and now you're ready to go. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't done talk back in our studios, because it's forcing our producers and our commentators to find a way to communicate with each other. And then when the talk back comes about, it becomes a real thing. But they've already relied on other things in order to communicate. So, again, not all of it's meant to be learning. Some of it's meant, hey, we don't have a budget for it, or we're trying to figure this out. Other things are intentional. Other things are not, I just, we haven't talked about the network in a bit. We talk about some things here and there. We talk about viewership and our Roku channel is flourishing right now. I mean, it's got 100,000 views in the last, 4 days and which is tremendous, of which that's basically just the weekend. And so we know our numbers are continuing to increase in Roku land. Our viewership on TV apps is up tremendously. So people watching on their TV, I think of that 100,000 people last week who watched our app, I think 40% of them watched it on their TV. So 40,000 people watched it on their TV. It's pretty cool. Think about that for a second, But the area that just hasn't taken off for us has been our news division. It just hasn't. I mean, we post articles every day, and its views have not increased. It hasn't. It hasn't increased. And I don't place that on anyone's shoulders, but it hasn't increased. And why is that? I don't know. Hasn't increased. So we're going to pause our news division. We're pausing it. I don't know for how long. I don't know what's going to come of it, but it's going to be paused. And we will find a way to look at that and to develop it in a way in which it gets the same views that we're currently getting, on our YouTube and our Roku channels. I don't know why you're not reading our news stories. I don't know. I mean, they get posted to social media. They go out to the world. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't put a finger on it. And I'm not, is it not good content? Is it not well written? Again, is it not as a headline? Like I don't know. But what I do know is that they're not being read on a consistent basis. Writing an article, 3, 4, 5, 6 articles, and then collectively they get 70 views. That's not good. You can tell me all day long it was the greatest article ever written, but if we only have 70 views, there's an argument either way. So we're pausing a news division. Hard reset,
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm rattled.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes back to exactly what you said. People just consume information differently. I think there is something to be said about, originality too. I think there's a lot of copycats. There's a lot of people who are just taking other people's information and reformatting it in their own way and then just pushing it out. make the news division more visual based, like a weekly podcast. I mean, that's all part of it, right? This is kind of a branch of us sharing that information and collecting the information we need to make sure that people are informed on what's going on in the soccer space, But again, it comes back to it comes back to people and support, and again, to provide a lack of or a measure of consistency is a hard thing to do, because again, the way that you package that matters now. Again, people don't consume information the way they used to. We say that all the time. It's a broken record. We get it. I mean, even with what we do in terms of the social media stuff, our happy zone, and I've expressed this before, is anywhere, 15 to 30 seconds. If you can get the important information that you need to get out there in 15 to 30 seconds, and you can package it up and make it look nice and make it readable and legible and all these other things, then you're going to be able to attract people, because frankly, just no one has time anymore. No one has time anymore. I don't have time anymore. You don't have time anymore. No one has time for anything. Every moment of every day, I feel like, is scheduled out to something. And even then, I still try to find a way to make time for family, make time for friends, make time for other people, because I do think it's important. And again, I was referencing an individual on social media a little bit earlier that was talking about how the sports world never stops. But it's on you a lot of times to figure out the balance and all that. It's not on anybody else. It's not on your employer. It's not on anybody else. You have to find that balance. But it's the way that people consume the information. And even me too, I'm guilty of this. Like the Grand Rapids Press here in Grand Rapids, Michigan used to be massive. They had writers for them all over the place. Everybody got the paper. Everybody read the paper. It's been reduced to a multimedia company now. That's what they do. They do short videos, they do online pieces, but it's not long-winded. It's very short. I mean, it's three, 4 paragraphs. I mean, even look at some of the leading up to the USLW championship and some of those other games. I mean, look at the the headlines. Look at the articles that were released on the website. I mean, like 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. That's it. That's all you need. It has all the information right there. It has everything that you need right in front of you. But the hard thing is again, how do you maintain a level of integrity in doing all this and not just take other people's stuff and repackage it? I mean, I get it. Like you want more and more and more and more, and I understand it, but you need to have people who have good connections, but you also need to have a division that's deep enough to do these things and versatile enough, and I think sometimes when you feel on an island a little bit, maybe you don't get that. And so that's a hard thing, again, in balancing everything that we're talking about and figuring out a way of changing it so that it's not what it used to be. And I think that's the hard part, is that with where we are in this industry, everything is ever changing. It never stays the same. And that is the part. You could go work in certain industries and things won't change for 20, 30 years. And you'll just keep doing the same thing the same way for the longest time. But it's constantly changing in the sports world.
No, I mean, it is. And there's a reason why ESPN, has laid off. There's a reason why the news organizations around this country are laying people off. And it's not because they're bad writers, because no one's reading them anymore. Again, and it was an ongoing debate here inside of our studios a lot, talking about media and what's the definition of it. Because a journalist used to be somebody who went to college, journalism degree, broadcasting, whatever, went through all the things necessary, probably got an internship someplace at a paper, and started writing, and now they're in journalism. But today, anybody with a phone, computer, can start their own blog and grow a following. Whether it's true or not, that's a thing. And the fact that we're not embracing that,
Yeah.
I mean, again, the White House is embracing it. The White House is allowing bloggers to ask questions. They're not trained media personalities. These are people who these are kids, college kids.
I don't know if I like that, but yeah,
but
go ahead.
But what I'm saying though is that there are a ton of people out there who have a tremendous following. They are considered influencers, and influencers are in today's world the ones that create, I mean, almost everything we see now. I mean, and so I think that's an important thing to say, is that influencers drive a lot of things, good, bad, or indifferent. And while do I think that every influencer should be given a platform? No, I don't, because some of them are just, but if we're talking about growing, right, we're talking about creating, we want to create an environment where people are able to do what they do, and do that. What we were trying to do here was doing what was happening 30 years ago and not evolving in that division. If you aren't again, I don't even know what that entirely means, but our job is to evolve. It's to evolve. And if we're not evolving, we're going to fall behind. And so there's a reason why our readership is down, and so that's the nature of this. Our viewership is going to drop in the next 30 days on all of our platforms because we're not going to have as many games, right? And so what do we do during that time period? What do we do to keep engagement? Let's book more games and create content that will, people want to watch, people want to tune in. That's what we're going to have to do, Nate, right? I mean, we're going to have to do that. It's going to come in the form of our show. It's going to come in the form of other content we come up with, other shorts, behind the scenes stuff, things that we're going to be doing to help continue to push what we're doing forward while we wait for our new stuff to kick in here in the next 3 months, next 2 months. But evolving is something that we have to be doing on a regular basis. And when I go out and I spend 5 minutes writing an article and I put a headline that is a thought-provoking question and it gets more views, right? That to me, I don't know anything about writing, and so we just have to develop that division, and it wasn't being developed. So it's paused. We're pausing it. We'll reevaluate it. We'll take a look at it. We'll figure out, we'll put our heads together, and see what happens. That's the part that rattles me is that part of this. Yeah. But what's going to come out of this is going to be, I believe, good. I'm a firm believer that traveled will lead to more, to more success. And so we're gonna evaluate this. We're gonna take a look at everything, just like we do everything else in our business, right? Everything else, I'm constantly evaluating. As I said before, we're constantly evaluating. The viewership of this show has increased tremendously, over the last 6 months, tremendously. And again, we're buried on our YouTube channel between all the 750 other games that we do, right? So we're buried right now. We're the only thing live on our platform. Our Roku channel has continued, to grow. Our viewership on this show alone on Roku is well over 700 views per show, right? And so the viewership of this has grown tremendously. It will continue to grow as we continue to do this. It's an algorithm thing. Right. The more you do something, the more people see it, the more it grows. It's just kind of how it works. And so we will continue to pump energy and time and space into this, and we will find a way to get our news division to be more flourishing, because it isn't. And it's my job sometimes to make these tough decisions and alongside with our partners, and that's what we did. Good, bad, or indifferent. And so that means that we're going to have to, like I said, reevaluate the whole thing and come up with it. And yeah. So.
Yeah. Change is a scary thing. Change is something that is necessary. Like I was talking about in this field, it's necessary. You got to do things different ways. You got to clip up stuff different ways. You got to share different things. And that's the hardest component. That is the hardest component of anything in the sports world whatsoever. Period. End of story. Like the amount of times you have to revisit things and revise things and do things differently and see things differently is really hard for some people to grasp. It's really hard for some people to learn from and to cling on to, because we want to do things the way that we're comfortable with doing them. Even with me, it's the whole reason why I'm here. It's the whole reason why I'm doing this, because soccer was never on the horizon for me once upon a time. I never thought there would be a potential. I never thought there'd be anything like that. And to be truthful with you, what I'm doing is far different than what I think a lot of people in my position are doing right now. If you're in baseball, you're in baseball for a lot of these guys. If you're doing this sport, you're doing that sport. If you're doing this job, you're doing that job. For me, it's depending on the week, depending where my feet are, I'm doing something completely different. I went from broadcasting to professional baseball organizations to a couple of days later, I'm calling a United Soccer League playoff match. It's bizarre. It's different, but priding yourself on flexibility and availability and being willing to change things and learn different avenues and different stuff about the industry. And even recently, accepting a new position, kind of being behind the scenes and working on production stuff at, we working a lot with Davenport University. And I want to be able to do all that stuff, to have an understanding of all that stuff and meet all the people in those avenues, so that all of that is only going to make you better and more suited to, again, grow the things that you need to grow. And it's the way I look at social media too. What I've collected from watching other creators and what they've said and what they've shared. The whole thing about you got to make a hook. The first 5 seconds of your clip has to get people in. And then once they're in, you can get them from there. It's almost like setting a bear trap, or a mouse trap or whatever. That's a lot of what social media is. And I even talked about this yesterday with Ryan Glinsky. I mean, look at Woodward, man. I mean, hell, do I like those guys all the time? Hell no. I don't think anyone in the state of Michigan would say they do, but you got to give them credit, because what they do, again, it's all about clicks. And that's it. It sucks. And it's what I hate about the sports world, but it's the reality and the situation in which we live. Because, to attract, again, the casual, and that's not even meant to be a derogatory thing. That's just meant to be honest in terms of my assessment of what a lot of people that consume the information are. They're casuals. But in order to target those people, you need to be willing to adjust. You need to be willing to adapt. You need to be willing to do the things that will get that information in front of them in a convenient, easy to consume manner. And that's a hard thing, because that forces you to adjust. It forces you to change on the fly, mind you. So it's hard, man. It's really, really hard. And yeah, sometimes it takes just being like, hey, we're going to pause, because we need to figure out this, that, or the other thing. We need to readjust. We need to look at everything that we're doing to figure out what we need to do to move forward. Because I know that sometimes people get stuck in the way that they think things should be done, and that leaves a lot to be desired. So, it's hard. But like I said, it's nothing that we've never been through before. It's nothing that we haven't had to do before. It's just a matter of reconvening and replanning and getting back to the drawing board, which, as a company that's growing, is a really hard thing to do. It's really hard to continue to go back to the drawing board, but it's necessary.
Yeah, and just like as a coach, my job was to evaluate players. by talent, by intelligence, understanding of the game, how they dealt with and interacted with their other teammates, the characteristics, that we were looking for. Obviously, talent was probably the easiest thing to evaluate. You either have it or you don't, right? You can, we know what they are, but with work, they can get there. The intangibles are the ones, you know what I mean? Players, just like employees, just like people that work for you, very similar, right? How you talk about when you're evaluating, right? How they respond to criticism, how they respond to a critique, how they try to push themselves. When a coach comes to you and says, hey, you have to work on this, how do they handle that? All those things, it's very much the same from my perspective. And the players out there that I worked with that understood that dynamic would take it seriously, and they would work on the things that they needed to work on based on our observations and our criticisms to get better at the game. And it might have nothing to do with talent at all, and everything to do with how they interact with their teammates and all the other things I talked about. You know what I mean? Our culture in our company growing is extremely important to us. Culture is important. How people interact in this environment, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy. All of that is something that is going to be something that we're continuing to build. And having anyone who works in your environment that could hurt that is something that's constantly being evaluated. And that's from everybody's perspective. You know what I mean? How, and that's even maybe from me too. Right? What am I, I've been told that I'm too hard on my kids in our environment. And that's, first off, they're my kids. So I'm still a dad. And so my kids don't do something they shouldn't do. I might get, more upset with them than an employee, but my kids are my kids. And so I've had to kind of maybe be less hard with them in this environment than I maybe would have been in the years past. It's a process for me for sure as a dad that I sometimes find hard time between dad and maybe boss, but I don't think that that's unique to me. It's probably something that a lot of people in my position probably experience. But I think what's important, I think what the takeaway from the show to be is this, is that there are going to be challenges in everything that we do, right, from a growing standpoint. And it's my job, it's the job of this organization to figure out where those challenges are and how do we overcome them. You know what I mean? And so understanding that, and so our theme of this show is about overcoming those challenges. And sometimes there is no overcoming. Sometimes the challenge is there's a roadblock. You have to acknowledge that there's a roadblock, and you have to say, okay, we're gonna cut our losses, or we're gonna create a detour, and so that should be the theme of this. Nothing bad about this. You know what I mean? There's nothing bad. I mean, we're not this isn't like the company's going away. We've just made a decision in our news division that things are going to pause, and then we're going to evaluate and figure out how to approach it in a way that makes sense so that division can be flourishing and growing in a way that makes sense for the business, period. And I think that's the most important part. And we will do everything we can to make sure that division is flourishing. Under its current, kind of setup and current development, it wasn't. And it's my job to make those tough decisions, and we did. And so we'll pause, reconvene, and figure it out. In the meantime, you might get some news articles from me. Whew, that might be rough. So you might get something from me, and we'll go from there. So we'll hey, I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, we're excited about our growth, and the growth is coming in a lot of areas, and we'll continue to focus on those areas, continue to find ways to make this thing flourish, continue to make and find ways for us to produce strong content that can be consumed in many different ways, including through the written word. And we will work on that and do that. But that is a wrap here on episode number 123 here on this Thursday, July 24th. We'll get back into soccer talk tomorrow. We'll talk about Lionel Messi not playing in the All-Star game. We'll talk about that tomorrow. We'll talk about a whole lot more soccer stuff here tomorrow. We'll do it right here on Inside the Game on the National Soccer Network. I'm Jonathan Turner. That's Nathan Wanger. Back at this here, same time, same place, tomorrow morning, right here on Inside the Game.